take the number 3 tram from Prague Newtown to Prague 8, you will see by the tram stop a mural. It was created by Jakub Marek and depicts a military operation. A board nearby tells us it is Operation Anthropoid, a plan to assassinate a high-ranking Nazi officer in World War II. The intended target of the plan was Reinhard Heydrich. He was born in 1904 and joined the Navy in 1922. He was dishonourably discharged in 1931 and in the same year joined the Nazi Party and the SS to set up their intelligence service. By 1936 he had risen within the SS and was deputy head of the German police under Himmler. He organised the Kristallnacht and formed the Einsatzgruppen responsible for the murder of thousands of Soviet Jews. On the 27th of September 1941, he was appointed Deputy Reichsprotector of Bohemia and Moravia. This was immediately followed by mass arrests and executions, which effectively paralysed resistance to the German occupation. His brutality led to his nickname of the Butcher of Prague. In January 1942, Heydrich chaired the Wannsee Conference, which laid down the plans for the final solution, the genocide of all Jews in German-occupied Europe. He can truly be regarded as one of the most evil and brutal figures in the Nazi regime. A Czechoslovakian government in exile was based in London, and to legitimise their existence and to show some form of resistance to the Germans, a plan was formed to assassinate Heydrich. It was at this address in Bayswater Road, London, that Operation Anthropoid was planned. 2 Czechoslovak soldiers, Josef Gabčík and Jan Kubiš, were trained by the British Special Operations Executive. To tell the story of Operation Anthropoid, let us return to Jakub Marek's mural. Gabčík and Kubiš and 7 other paratroopers were flown by the RAF and parachuted into Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia. Gabčík and Kubiš landed east of Prague and made contact with the resistance. Local resistance members feared reprisals if the plan went ahead, but the Czechoslovak government in exile insisted that it did. A plan was eventually agreed upon. Heydrich travelled every day from his house to Prague Castle with only his driver Klein. A point was chosen where the Mercedes car had to slow down for a bend in the road. On the morning of the 27th of May 1942, Gabčík and Kubiš took up positions near the tram stop, and another soldier, Josef Valčík, was stationed about 100 metres up the road as a lookout. As the Mercedes slowed for the corner, Gabčík stepped out and raised his Sten gun and pulled the trigger. But nothing happened. The Sten gun had jammed. Heydrich, instead of ordering Klein to drive out of danger, ordered him to stop, and he stood up and pulled out his Luger pistol. Kubiš then threw a modified anti-tank grenade at the vehicle, but it landed short and exploded near the rear wheel. The explosion seriously wounded Heydrich, but he still got out of the car and exchanged fire with Gabčík. Eventually, Gabčík and Kubiš made good their escape, leaving Heydrich and Klein wounded. Heydrich was taken to a nearby hospital in a delivery van, and initially appeared to be responding well to treatment. However, he took a turn for the worse, and he died on the 4th of June. He was accorded state funerals in Prague and Berlin. The scene of the assassination is very different today. The sharp curve has gone, and the tram stop has been moved further up the hill. The site is marked by a triangular column surmounted by 3 soldiers, representing Gabčík, Kubiš and Valčík. Reprisals began almost immediately, and about 13,000 people were arrested, with an estimated 5,000 being killed, including the so-called false scent, which led to the destruction of the village of Lidice and the murder of all the men and deportation to concentration camps of the women and children. This action was widely publicised by the Germans, and led to worldwide condemnation. The soldiers with others hid in safe houses in Prague before hiding in the cathedral of St. Cyril and Methodius. The Germans were still unable to find them and issued an ultimatum that there would be further reprisals if the assailants were not apprehended by the 18th of June. A member of the resistance, Karol Kerda, surrendered and gave details of addresses and occupants. These premises were raided on the 17th of June and the location of the soldiers extracted. In the early hours of the 18th of June, the Waffen-SS laid siege to the cathedral. Adolf Opolka and Josef Bublik were killed after a 2-hour battle in the prayer loft. Jan Kubrish later died from his wounds. Josef Gabčík, Josef Walczyk, Jaroslav Svak and Jan Hruby fought on in the crypt, which the SS assaulted with machine guns and other weapons, firing at the small window facing onto the road. The local fire brigade was forced to pump water into the crypt in an effort to force them out. The SS tried to get into the crypt through a small hole in the floor, but were driven back. The SS also discovered another entrance, in front of the altar, which was blocked by a stone slab. This led to the stairs at the far end of the crypt. The stone slab was blown up with explosives, but before the SS could reach the paratroopers, they took their own lives to avoid capture. Today, on the forecourt of the cathedral, is a monument to all those who died as a result of the reprisals. The crypt is the national monument to the heroes of the Heydrich terror. The museum details the story from 1939, the German occupation, the assassination and the aftermath. The crypt itself is accessed by an unusual curved door and contains busts of the paratroopers who so gallantly fought and died in the name of freedom. The village of Lidice lay a few miles outside Prague. Very little remains of the village, but there is a monument with friezes of the German attack. An exhibition hall shows details of everyday life in the village before the attack. And the terror of the attack itself. The park itself has several statues and monuments to commemorate the villagers who died and to remember the atrocities of 1942. The question still remaining today is, Operation Anthropoid, was it worth it? Although reprisals were expected, neither the Czechoslovak government nor the British could have foreseen how far the Nazis would take the principle of collective responsibility. The assassination of Heydrich was one of the most important events of the Czech resistance. It established the Czechoslovak government in exile as one of the Allies. Diplomatically, France and Great Britain repudiated the Munich Agreement, or Munich Betrayal according to the Czechs. This meant that in the event of an Allied victory, Sudetenland would revert to Czechoslovakia. But more importantly, it was a defiant act of resistance against the Nazi regime, which is remembered by the Czech and Slovak peoples and its participants regarded as national heroes.